I was in the Fresno Regional Community Trauma Center in 2009 on my wilderness EMT clinical study. And I was watching the doctor put his fingers inside of a hemopneumothorax. So actually release the blood and air buildup that's compressed a lung of a patient. And he said, "You there, resident, I need you to do something or other." And I said, I'm not a resident. I'm an EMT student." And he said, "I don't care. I need your help." I was 18. I go, "Oh God, okay." And I jump in there and, basically hold his body in place while we like stitch a tube into his side. Well, flash forward 17 hours of the craziest single day of my life. I find myself standing not 3 feet from the labor and delivery doctor performing a C-section on a woman in the hospital. This woman was a probably undocumented immigrant, non-speaking person of apparent Chinese descent who was really struggling with sense making in the room, was basically disoriented, afraid, not well. They couldn't communicate with her. I don't remember if there was a partner of hers there, but there certainly was this sense of urgency in the fluorescent lights. And I'm standing there watching the doctor like taking out her death tools basically, and she says, "You there, resident, I need your help." And I was like, "I'm an 18-year-old EMT student." And she was like, "I don't care, I need you now." And so next thing you know, she beckons me over, and I'm standing not 2 feet away from the woman and the doctor. And my responsibility is to take the bloody gauze as it comes off of the person and put it on this kind of sorting mechanism that counts all the tools, that all the pieces of gauze that were used in the surgery to make sure that nothing is inside of the patient when it's done. So I'm standing there when she takes out the first incisor, slices across the woman, and like the tauntaun in Empire Strikes Back, I watch her like skin and fat layers part. I watch the doctor go in. I watch her flip the bladder up. I watch her basically reach inside and pull out a totally cyanotic baby, blue, tiny little baby. And I was just like, "Oh my God, there's a stillborn here." And then right in front of my eyes, it bloomed into a living entity. It flushed with color and it started crying. And I stared as the charred skin smell drifted in the air and the fluorescent lights and machines buzzed, and the doctor, impatient to move on to her next appointment, sort of moved the process along. And the poor mom behind the curtain just sort of wondered at what was happening, and then eventually was handed the baby, and her disorientation in some ways stopped, but she was so confused, lost, and hurt, and opioided, and all of the things. So anyway, needless to say, I have encountered a sharper edge of what birth can look like than most people in that experience. And it never left me the wonder of watching the life leap in the child, and also the sense of great sadness at that experience of that mother, as far away from the experience of Chief Beverly's as one can get. Chief Beverly Kiawiton Cook. She's the tribal chief of the Mohawks of Akwesasne. I met her up there about 2 years ago, and we were just sharing stories. There was about 15 of us, and it was snowing, huge, slow snowflakes outside, and there was a crackling fire, a perfectly windless day, just the gentlest downward drift you can imagine. And all these other elders had spoken, and she hadn't. And I had almost had the sense she felt like she was younger. She was a younger in this peer group of very powerful elders. And finally, it comes to be lunchtime, and she's sitting there with her back against the frame of this drifting snow, and she starts to tell a story. And in the story, her daughter, who carries water in peyote ceremony, goes into labor during a ceremony. So she actually leaves the teepee and goes to her house. And when she's there, the women and the midwives, kind of attuning to this, leave the teepee as well, and they go into the house. And Chief goes with them. She is a nurse practitioner, but in this case was mainly in the role of mom, and was watching her daughter, in her words, pace back and forth in the hallway like a doe in the forest. A perfect level of serenity and self-control and quiet the whole time. And she didn't say a word. She just walked back and forth for several hours. And when the ceremony wrapped up inside, she came the men who were playing and singing came into the house. So now the woman is in her room, the midwives are with her, the aunties are there, the husband comes in, and the uncles stay in the living room and play and sing songs, but this time to the child being born, singing the birthing baby into life. The husband and wife end up sitting in tantric concentration with their foreheads touching and just breathing for an hour, silent like that. And then she says, I feel pressure. That was the only thing she said the whole time. And then the baby started coming, and the midwife, Gudji, took her husband's hands and put them there, and he caught the baby when the baby came out. And the only sound was the singing of the uncles in the room next door. So she's telling me this story, and I actually got like as strong a cosmic electrocution as I've ever had in my entire life. And I just started holding on to the table for dear life as if the power and beauty and blessedness of what she was saying was going to wash me away. Like I was the water breaking in that moment. And it actually redirected my life in some ways because I had just read this, for me, a sacred text, Island, Aldous Huxley's last novel, for the 12th time. And in the reading, found this throwaway paragraph about how the state chose to focus on making childbirth painless, or in this case, in the interpretation more broadly, beautiful birth as a tool to build peace among the people. And I didn't know what that meant until Chief told that story. And actually, it's fertile for this terrain because I said to her afterwards my experience of being electrocuted by the cosmos when she shared that story, and how if I could do anything to uplift her voice and her storytelling, I would. And she essentially said, Funny, I've been thinking about writing a book. And I said, Great, let me help you. And it's been 2 years of working together for hundreds and hundreds of hours and dozens of times in person. And I just got off a whole week with her, and we're getting there on this project. And so it's like the work of a lifetime. And so much of my teaching in the domain of sacred storytelling has been the outgrowth of our work and running more and more groups to keep her going in her process. So, welcome to the field, Chief Beverly, and what an incredible story. That chapter in her book is called We Pulled Him Out of the Fireplace, because that's what Gudji said. The fireplace is this doorway to the ancestral realm that the birth started in front of. I just am so grateful to each of you for the generosity of spirit with which you would share such precious and important things. I'm grateful to everyone for the space holding and attention for one another. I am always in awe of the power of this kind of storytelling to humanize everybody and make me understand where they are in their journey and feel empathy and compassion and love and some quality of this combination of grief, awe, and laughter. Those feel like the ultimate combination to feel. It's very different. Grief is actually active versus disassociation or avoidance, or grief is like a great, put that on the life spectrum and move it right along. So I so appreciate that. I want to point out what we did. This is just something amazing. I have now been teaching this sort of craft for over 3 years and hosted dozens and dozens of different workshops and gatherings. And there's something about the alchemy of who's in the room and what is said that stirs up, like I just call it silver and gold. I like to talk about the lake of now. You scoop the muck from the bottom of the lake of now, and up swirls the muck cloud, and then you're looking in it, and these little things are shining, silver and gold. And in the work I do, that's what we take and pile on the shore. We get curious. What is that? Why did that woman standing that way after her child did that thing? Why did that move me so much? And that's where this pole work, the polarity comes into play. We ultimately are most moved by the things that represent places we've been wounded, because that is where our great strength and gifts are. And so to go explore where those things wound us gives emotional weight and power to the story that we tell. And so, in a really simple structure, because I hope for each of you to have something meaningful to take away from this short time together, is that you have this opportunity to go practice this story that is essentially two scenes, right? The scene of the suffering that you've shared with us, and the scene of the second thing, The more vivid, the better. That's the simplest articulation. Think of the tauntaun slicing, the C-section, the smell. Like the moments carry the most charge. And when we know the stakes for you, then it's all the better. So a lot of times in our storytelling, we feel obligated to give a lot of context, like I was 18, I had traveled to Yosemite, I was in this EMT program, we were staying with all these people, and but it's like the fireplace is like just going down, down, right? Versus like I'm standing there as the man reaches his hand into the lung, and you're like, holy shit, like I am gone. I'm inside of that. That's the magic. It's this transporting, profound, alchemical, primordial magic. And unfortunately, it's mostly controlled by corporations using that fact that will merge with great stories to shape our values and sell us things. So this is sacred storytelling in shifting times. It's bringing to the foreground the incredible, brave, griefful, awful, laughterful humanity of yours and offering it as a gift or jewel for others.